Tonight, the story of a Sikh chief declared a terrorist by the Indian government, hailed as a leader by the Sikh community in Canada. And will Canada overcome violent denialism while uncovering unmarked graves on previous residential schools? We cover stories about talks between the world's two largest economies, a Quran desecration in Greece, and a documentary, The Angel Within, shows the best of Canadian spirit. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I am Catherine Bullock. A Sikh separatist wanted by the Indian government has been shot dead over the weekend in a Sikh temple in Canada. Hardeep Singh Nijjar was the leader of the Khalistan Tiger Force. The force is part of the wider Khalistan separatist movement. Nijjar's body was discovered on Sunday evening in the parking lot of a Sikh Gurdwara in Surrey, British Columbia. He was found shot dead in his car. Soon after the news of his death, a group of Sikhs raised pro-Khalistan banners and staged a roadblock in front of the Gurdwara. India wanted to arrest Nijjar in conjunction with the killing of 2 years ago a Hindu priest in India. He had been accused of providing training and financial support to members of the separatist group. India declared him a terrorist. The Indian government had offered a reward of nearly 16,000 Canadian dollars for any information leading to his arrest. According to reports from Indian media, a list of wanted individuals that included in Nijjar's name had been handed over to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau during the PM's 2018 visit to India. The Indian government has not been happy with Canada lately for other reasons. Canada had apparently allowed a float in a parade that depicted the assassination of Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi by her bodyguards. India believes this glorifies violence by Sikh separatists. India's foreign minister criticized the space provided to separatists, extremists, and advocates of violence. He said that it was detrimental to the bilateral relationship between the two countries and not in Canada's best interest. And earlier this year, summoned Canada's High Commissioner to address concerns regarding Sikh separatist protesters in Canada who had breached the security of India's diplomatic mission and consulates. Canada is home to the largest population of Sikh outside of India. The Khalistan movement advocates for the secession of Sikhs. It aims to establish a separate homeland within the Punjab state of India. A report commissioned by the federal government says there are dozens of obstacles to uncovering unmarked residential school graves in Canada, including violent denialism. Kimberly Murray, a government advisor, filed the report. Her appointment is meant to help Indigenous communities find children who died while attending residential schools. Murray spent the last year traveling the country and hearing stories from families and survivors. She has detailed 48 barriers that are hindering the process to identify the unknown children. One of these is violent denialism that she calls, quote, prolific. She says the violence takes place in several forms, including social media, in-person confrontations, and graveyard invasions. Murray has urged federal protection of unmarked burial sites. She adds that timely access to school records is important, since the records will be destroyed in 2027. She says the access will help identify children and establish compensation claims for families of the victims. Murray is asking the federal government for better funding for searches and safeguards against the violence denialism creates. The residential schools ran for nearly 160 years in Canada. Their aim was to wipe out Indigenous culture. Indigenous children were forcibly taken from their families. The families were not informed when their children died and were buried at school sites. The schools were run by various religious organizations, including the Roman Catholic, Anglican, Presbyterian, and United Churches. Israel says there will not be any direct flights to Saudi Arabia for the Muslim Hajj pilgrimage this year. It also says hopes of a US-mediated normalization of relations with the kingdom have been played down. Last year, Saudi Arabia gave its nod to neighboring Gulf countries, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, to forge ties with Israel. However, Saudi Arabia has held off from doing the same thing. It says it will not develop diplomatic ties with Israel before the Palestinian issue is addressed. Despite this, Israel and US officials were speculating that Saudi Arabia might allow Israel's Muslim minority to fly directly for this year's Hajj. With the Hajj pilgrimage just around the corner, Israel's national security advisor has acknowledged that direct flights will not be happening this year. He expressed hope that things might be different for next year's Hajj. When the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Saudi Arabia recently, Riyadh asked for the US's support in a civilian nuclear program in exchange for normalization with Israel. Israel has expressed reservations about such an arrangement. Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen told an Israeli media source that the US has a window of opportunity until March 2024 to address the Saudis' demands for normalization. He said, beyond that time frame, the US would be preoccupied with the presidential election. German Muslims say they do not report Islamophobic attacks because they distrust German officials. This comes after a parliamentary session revealed 124 attacks on Muslims and mosques across Germany. These attacks occurred only in the first 3 months of this year. That is an average of more than one a day. The attacks include cases of intimidation, vandalism, and damage to properties. 2 mosques in the city of Hanover and Dresden were targeted last month. These attacks renewed calls for stricter measures to protect the Muslim community. The chairman of the Islamic Council of Germany told a media source many Muslims do not report incidents of Islamophobia because such acts are not clearly defined or because they do not trust authorities. He says, sometimes attacks against mosques are not listed under the category of Islamophobic attacks. He says instead, they are listed as arson attacks, which means the real number of Islamophobic attacks is higher. Germany has seen a wave of Islamophobic attacks in the recent past. Police say the attacks are mostly carried out by neo-Nazi and right-wing extremist groups. The growing Islamophobic threat in Germany also ties in with a surge in support for far-right political forces. The chairman of the Islamic Council points out that hateful comments from politicians fuel anti-Muslim hostility in Germany. A new poll last week placed the far-right Alternative for Deutschland party in second place. This puts it ahead of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's Social Democrats for the first time since the elections 2 years ago. After France, Germany has the second largest Muslim population in Western Europe. The country of over 84 million people is home to nearly 5 million Muslims. For more on US-China talks, please stay tuned. We will be right back. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he and China's leaders agree on the need to stabilize relations between the two countries. But he also says the two leading world economies have significant disagreements. The news comes after Blinken's recent visit to Beijing. After 2 days of talks, Blinken told reporters in Beijing that he strongly encourages direct engagement between the two countries to avoid conflict. He rejected the idea that the US wants to economically contain China. He says the US is cautious about providing technology that could be used against the US. He expressed concerns about China's nuclear program and hypersonic missiles. Blinken says other countries share these concerns and have similar views on technology transfers. On Taiwan, Blinken says the US supports maintaining the status quo and discourages independence. He also called on China to use its influence on North Korea to get it to promote dialogue and end its provocative behavior. Greece's Religious Affairs and Education Ministry is affirming respect for places of worship is a, quote, non-negotiable value for Greece. The ministry's general secretary made these comments in the wake of a provocative act by a French citizen who tore a copy of the Quran at a mosque in Western Thrace in Greece. He was reported to the police by local residents. Local police took him to the police station. Prominent figures of the Turkish minority there also condemned the provocative act. Muslims are a minority in Western Thrace, which borders Turkey on its east. Approximately 150,000 Turkic people live in Western Thrace. The premiere of the documentary film The Angel Within was held this Saturday in Toronto's Scotiabank Theatre. The film shows Canada's role in humanitarian causes. It highlights Canada's immigration and refugee policies, its fight against COVID, and its government-backed financial relief that make Canada one of the most desirable places to live. Fahimin Ahmed Ali and Ali Umair produced the documentary. Humanity, a Canadian-based not-for-profit organization that combats food insecurity globally, was a sponsor of the film. Thank you for watching. Sound Vision is a not-for-profit organization. It produces our news. We need your support for donations. Please scan the QR code on our broadcast or visit muslimnetwork.tv to donate now so we can continue to amplify the voices of Muslims in Canada and abroad.